Welcome back. Today I'm continuing this Alan Watts challenge, so to speak. And if you're wondering what I mean by that, you don't have to go back to my first video because I'll tell you right now. What I mean by Alan Watts challenge is that he mentioned in one of his talks that anybody that wants to go to a university should actually be asked to write something like a 20-page essay on their idea of paradise, what paradise is to them. So I'm taking it upon myself to do that in a video format, and boy did I take on a task here, because I've got a feeling that this is going to be going on for quite a while. As it turns out, I have a lot of ideas and vision when it comes to paradise, or heaven on earth as I call it, which to me is the same thing. And there's a lot of interesting and thought-provoking, exciting ideas connected to our idea of paradise. There's famous works of literature called Paradise Lost and Paradise Found, and so part of what I'm hoping to do with my little talk here is to address this issue or event of humanity being pushed out or banned from the Garden of Eden, and therefore paradise was lost to humanity. And in so doing, I also hope to give some insights on how to regain paradise, to find paradise again. So to get us started here, I want to drop a few headlines or topics on you, and then just to give you an idea where I'm going to go with this video today. To begin with, I want to say that my paradise, my vision of paradise, will be a world where there is a constant free flow of life force energy. And also, I'm going to be covering the topic of the big S word, sex and relationships. And that's a very general term, especially in my world and beliefs. For some people it means one particular thing, but for me it actually means a whole bunch of different things that are connected, and it also has to do with my first general topic of our life force energy. Excuse me. So just by saying that there'll be a free flow, a constant free flow of life force energy in my paradise, may make you wonder, well, what is going on with our current reality and, say, non-paradisal world? Is there some kind of stifling of life force energy going on? Is there repression, suppression of life force energy in various ways? Oh, and I wanted to drop one more basic topic and headline for this talk, and that would be the goddess. And why do you think I remembered to say that when I was talking about the possibility that we're stifling our life force energy in this world? Well, that if your suspicions are that I'm implying there's a connection there, then your suspicions are on the right track. So I feel this is a major important part of paradise, in my view. And again, all of this is just my opinion. I'm not telling you that any of this is necessarily the truth. It's just my truth and my way of seeing things. We all have our own truths and relative truths and ways of seeing things, and that may seem contrary to what I have already said about truth, but there's different ways of looking at truth. But yes, indeed, there are things that are very true for a very long time, but I've also said that when you change your perspective, say to a much higher perspective, like literally, if you're on the ground all the time and then you go up off the ground, say in an airplane or whatever, you get a completely different perspective on the world you've been living in. So, and then certain things that were once true are no longer true anymore. Like, for instance, maybe you see something that you saw on the ground and it looked a certain way and you thought it was one thing, and then when you got up in an airplane, like these geoglyphs, for instance, they have those down in, I think it's in Bolivia or Peru or somewhere, where they got these giant pictures, ancient pictures or artwork of different animals and so forth on the ground that you can only see when you're high up in the air. So that illustrates my point about changing perspectives on truth. It doesn't mean that truth isn't true anymore. It just means it's no longer true from where you're at now. So say your level of consciousness has raised. That truth that you once had is still true back in that dimension, so to speak, or that at that level of consciousness, it's still true. But up here at this level of consciousness that you're now at, it's no longer true. It's somewhere else. It's a truth somewhere else, in a sense. So, not to get too off on a tangent here, off track, back to what I was saying about suppression and stifling of life force energy, just to put it to you straight, is that there's been a long-standing effort in our world, and I'm not going to point any fingers because we're all responsible at some level or in some way. And I could get into that about why or how, because that triggers people. They're like, no, I don't have anything to do with suppressing this or that. And I'm not saying that you directly do it or go out of your way. I'm just saying it's the general level of consciousness that we have all adopted and held and, supported in various ways that makes it possible for certain kinds of both light and dark It makes it possible for certain kinds of suppression and a whole host of negative things to be possible. So, anyways, what I'm saying is there's been a stifling of life force energy that's been going on for a very long time, and it is very much related to our sexuality and how we utilize and view, understand our sexuality. We've been taught to we've been taught to view our sexuality essentially as a negative thing, as more of an inconvenience or embarrassing. But when you reframe it as what it is, that means literally we create lives, we bring new lives into this world through the act of sex. So what does that tell you? How can that be a negative thing? Unless people throw a bunch of dogma and beliefs, negative beliefs on top of it to try to indoctrinate you into thinking it's negative, or by shaming you about certain things in order to make you feel negative. Now, why would somebody want to do that? Why would they want you to feel negative about it? Well, why would those in power want us to feel bad about ourselves? Would it possibly be a way to control us through our shame and guilt and general discontent? I'm not saying that's necessarily the case. I'm just suggesting it to you that may be a possibility. Because what do I know? I have ideas about things, but that doesn't mean I'm the authority on anything. Like Jacob Israel says, I'm just a bit of a meatball. I like to ask questions. I like to postulate. So, if you can control the most important, really, when it comes right down to it, what's more important than our life force energy, our chi, as some call it, the prana? It's also related to your breath, the breath of life, which some cultures and traditions literally refer to life as the breath. So, and this very closely relates to sex too. We need to start looking at sex in a lot more macro as well as micro way. And by that I mean we've been conditioned to just look at it in a micro sense, like something that happens like with attraction between human beings, male or female, whatever. But this is going on. Everything is as above, so below. So it's going on in the celestial spheres, sex that is. It's going on with the planets, the galaxy, cosmos. It's literally things get attracted to each other, and then they have an influence on each other. They play out an influence and a dance through this magnetic and electric, or feminine and masculine forces and influences. So it's happening at all levels. And that's another reason why would we ever feel shameful about something that's happening. in every level of reality that is a part of the total makeup of the cosmos. So this is what I'm talking about, the free flow of life force energy. And yes, it's not just an abstract thing where everybody will just believe that, oh, we need to have let's have a free flow of life force energy. Well, okay, that's nice, but that's still just an abstract idea, concept in your head that you're believing. Don't just believe in concepts, actually apply it, like find out how it's actually playing out in your reality. And when it comes to life force energy, one of the ways, not the only way, but one of the ways that it plays out is through our sexuality. So what often has happened, is that people feel an attraction to a certain person, and certain feelings or whatever come up, and right away they push it down and say, no, that's not appropriate for whatever reason. I'm married, or I'm involved with somebody else, or whatever. I'm only supposed to have that with one person. But why is it that so many people have those kinds of attractions and feelings with various people? And then they're supposed to feel bad about it. Or they do feel bad about it because they have been conditioned to do so. And I'm telling you that that's just a natural state of us, the way humans are. And there is nothing wrong with it. It's what you do with energy and feelings is the important part. So, in my ideal world, heaven, paradise, there's never going to be any stifling or shaming of this free flow of sexual energy. And what people do with it is their business. Now, when it comes to what people do with it, there's been a lot of misconceptions and taboos and this and that, all related to making sex dark, the suppression of it, the darkening aspect of sex. And all really, let's not think of it as evil. Let's think of it more in terms as when you push something into the dark, you can't see as well in the dark. So you're going to have misguided, misconceptions about it, deception, that kind of thing going on. So things that have been pushed into the dark for various reasons, and I don't need to get into an extensive talk. I could if I wanted to, but I don't need to get into an extensive talk about why everything. I've already implied why, but I'm just going to leave it at that and say that certain things, and sex is one of them, has been pushed into the dark. So what we need to do is reclaim it by pulling it back into the light. In a sense, we're it's about being whole again as a person and spiritualizing sexuality. And it's kind of a misnomer to say I'm spiritualizing sexuality by doing that, because it already is spiritual. It's just that we need to remember and recognize it as such, and realize that it is expressed and manifests in many different forms, not just the small handful of forms that we've been accustomed to, associating it. So I'll give you another example. I can use another word, intimacy. So kind of back to what I was saying about when somebody feels an attraction to somebody that's not their monogamous partner, and they feel some guilt or shame about it. all it is actually the truth of things just doing its thing. The fact that we're all one, for one thing. We all come from the same source, and that's one of the number one truths about it. So it's indicating that, and we've been separated in many different ways, and one particular way, and all kinds of things. And we're going to get into a lot of paradoxes here, but we've been separated, divided, and so when we feel those feelings, it's our soul, our spirit wanting to bring back together into the truth, our wholeness, where we came from. That's the whole drive behind it. It's not just, I'm just being horny or promiscuous or whatever. There's actually a lot more to it than that. And yes, those things exist, and I could get into that as well, of what that really is. But it has to do with what I said about pushing things into the dark and making certain things taboo that never really were, and just generally perverting something that's very sacred and wholesome and beautiful and whatnot. But that's a whole other video too. But it's this recognition that you have with somebody when you feel that attraction. It doesn't mean you need to go and physically have intimacy with them, have physical intimacy with them. I mean, it might, but you also have other parts and agreements and things you want to experience in life. And for a lot of people, that's monogamy, and so you value your monogamy. But I'm telling you that in my paradise world, there'll be monogamous relationships, and there'll be non-monogamous relationships, but there'll be monogamous relationships that at the very same time are open and free. And you might think that's a contradiction, but it actually isn't. Because all I mean by that is that we can have a free exchange of energy. And again, it comes back to being aware of what's really going on. It's an awareness of this life force energy that is just doing its thing and wanting to flow, just like blood flowing through the veins of your body. What happens when we get obstructions in the veins? You've got problems in your body. You're not as healthy, right? So what's going on, if you look at the body of humanity, our collective, all 8 billion people or whatever it is, if there's blockages here and there happening all the time, how healthy is that overall body? Not very healthy, right? So in my paradise, that body is going to be extremely healthy and vibrant. And the way to do that is to allow this life force, sexual energy to flow constantly. Now, people might say, yeah, but Greg, are you just going to have like a bunch of people, running around having sex with whoever and just being generally bacchic and disloyal and all those kinds of things, and lustful? And no, I'm not talking about lust at all. Lust is where you don't have any love involved, and it's just an objectification of sexuality. In my paradise, ideal world, everybody is going to love each other at a much higher level than we ever have before, in a more divine sense. We actually see each other as God. And so when there's intimacy between people, it's never lustful. It's always loving and with spiritual connection. That's the difference. When people lose that connection, they fall into lust. And that's what gets or has been pushed into the dark and created by that darkness, or as a result, I should say, of that darkness. So, what I'll back to, I keep going away, and I'm coming back around with this because there's a point to all of this. That when you have situations in my paradise where people will feel this strong attraction to somebody, but they're in a monogamous relationship, and this is part of me explaining how it can be open and free, and at the same time monogamous. So the person will feel this attraction, and then instead of pushing it down and feeling, justified and having shame and guilt and everything, they'll just accept it for what it is and see it more as a positive thing. And then carry on, because often what'll happen, or has happened in the past, is that people, when they feel that shame and guilt, then they will sort of close off relations with that person because they're afraid of what they might do. Now, if you're coming from a more, let's say, spiritually mature and evolved way of being, then why would you ever bring fear into that equation and be afraid of what you might do? Is it because you don't have control over yourself and you don't understand yourself or know yourself enough to know what would be appropriate at any given time? So you just need to ask yourself those questions. Why would you ever think, or why would you ever worry about something that you might do with somebody else? And you'll say, well, this sexual energy is so powerful. Yes, it is. It's one of the most powerful energies in the universe. But understanding something is power as well. And so when you understand, then something no longer has a power over you, and you can work in harmony with it. So what I'm talking about is, back to our scenario once again, is that instead of just closing off relations with this person, continue to be friends with them and just decide. And you probably both be feeling similar. I mean, not always, but often if a person feels that attraction, it's mutual, and then you need to communicate and be transparent about it. Recognize that it's there, and discuss it with this person and say, I feel this attraction for you, but I'm not going to express it in a certain way, but I want to continue expressing this intimacy with you, by talking to you and being good friends and so forth. Now, I mentioned that, wait a minute, before I go to something else, I want to say that, again, what I'm saying is freedom and openness in monogamous relationships has to do with a conscious effort and transparency and an honesty with ourselves and our partner at all times about what we want, and then always communicating, constant communication and transparency on what we want, and then agreements before we do anything that might break a previous agreement. So you need to form a new agreement, and you really need to always decide, if what you want is worth breaking this other agreement. And if it is, and you want it enough, then I say that's an energy that needs to flow. So let it flow. And yes, in some cases, that's going to break up relationships, but you know what? This gets into what I'm about to talk about next, that there is such a thing as, open relationships, loving relationships that are called polyamory, where people actually, let's say in a situation where somebody is, and this is what's happened a lot in the past, is couples will break up, and then there's, a lot of hurt feelings, and, in some cases it's very, understandable, but there's hurt feelings, and then say people, they still actually like each other, and they could be very good friends, and get along just fine, and continue a relationship. It could even, if their partner wanted to explore their sexuality with other people, more than just one person, let's say, um, they, people get hurt feelings, and then they decide, they're angry at their partner for wanting that, in the first place, and then they won't even talk to them after that. But I'm saying in a more evolved state, what would happen is that you'd have this discussion, and you would listen very closely, very carefully to your partner. You would each listen to each other, and then you go from there, and then decide how to continue, how to continue this relationship. If it's, I'm saying that when one partner wants that and the other doesn't, the one that doesn't want, say, polyamory, yes, they then have every right to say, well, I don't want to have a romantic relationship with you anymore if you're going to do that. But maybe in that case, they could still be really good friends and decide, what, we still like each other in certain ways, and we have fun together, and they could still have fun together, and this and that. And in my paradise, that's what would happen. And so there's going to be like a constant, like, yes, they'll be upset, and hurt feelings come up at times. A lot of that's going to be avoided because of the consciousness level, but or maybe at some stage, like I said, it's an evolving thing. At a certain